Crash Bandicoot has enjoyed a glorious return to the limelight these past few years, starting with Crash Bandicoot N.Sane Trilogy and then with Crash Team Racing Nitro-Fueled. But now, after a round of remakes, it's time, at long last, for something new again. With the upcoming Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, that's exactly what we're getting. And it's no surprise that quite a few people are very excited about the game and what it might have in store for us. In this feature, as we look ahead to its imminent launch, we'll be talking about some key details that you should know about the game. So without further ado, let's get started. Premise: Crash Bandicoot 4 is by no means the fourth mainline game in the trilogy, but its name makes it abundantly clear what its placement in the series' timeline is. Retconning everything that happened after Naughty Dog's original trilogy, It's About Time is set directly after the events of Crash Bandicoot Warped. As you might remember, the end of that game saw Neo-Cortex, Uka Uka, and Entropy being caught in a time-space prison, and as It's About Time begins, after many attempts to do so, the three of them finally manage to break out. In doing so, however, they expose a multiverse. In order to restore order to the multiverse and put a stop to the impending doom brought about by their actions, Crash and COCO must travel through the multiverse and find, unite, and work with the 4 quantum masks to set things right. Oh, and speaking of masks... Masks have always been an important part of the Crash Bandicoot franchise in several ways, and that's going to be true for It's About Time as well. Crash and COCO will be traveling the multiverse to gather 4 quantum masks with which to set things right, and each of them is going to have unique and interesting gameplay applications, which players will use not only to defeat enemies, but also to solve puzzles and platforming challenges. What exactly are each of these masks going to do though? Well, let's talk about that for a little bit. More mask details. Of the 4 masks in the game, developers Toys for Bob have so far talked in detail about 3. Capunawa is the Mask of Time, and with her equipped, Crash and COCO can slow time down and make platforming challenges a little easier. Then there's Ika Ika, the Mask of Gravity, which, as the name suggests, can be used to flip the direction of gravity, literally turning levels on their head. Finally, there's Lani Loli, the Mask of Phase, which can be equipped to phase various objects, such as crates and obstacles, out of existence. We do know that the 4th mask is called Akano, but what it does isn't something the developers have talked about yet. Characters. Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time will feature multiple playable characters, and all of them are going to have unique movement options and abilities. Crash and COCO will be the stars of the show, of course, but there are other notable playable characters as well. The ones that have been revealed so far are Neo-Cortex and Dingo Dial. Whether or not that there are more in the game that the developers haven't yet revealed remains to be seen. Crash and COCO. Crash and COCO will make up the bulk of the game, as you'd imagine, and you can expect them to move the way they have always, with lots of jumping, sliding, spinning, ziplining, wall running, and what have you. Interestingly enough, players will be able to swap between Crash and COCO at any time, even during levels, which means you can play the entire game, or at least the levels where they're playable, as whichever of the 2 you want. Neo-Cortex. Neo-Cortex is going to be different to play as than Crash and COCO, obviously, with a greater focus on strategizing rather than skill-based platforming, entailing the usage of gadgets to overcome obstacles and challenges. He can use a ray gun to transform enemies and obstacles in the environment into platforms, which he can then jump on and use to his advantage. Unlike Crash and COCO, he cannot double jump, but he does have a sideways dash ability, which one would imagine will be used for dodging attacks and more. Levels. Those familiar with the original Crash Bandicoot trilogy will find level design in Crash Bandicoot 4 to their liking. Rather than putting players in large open sandboxes, levels in Crash Bandicoot 4 will be linear, tightly designed platforming challenges. And it seems like the game is leveraging its multiverse premise as much as it can to provide some solid variety in terms of environments and how they're designed. So far, we've seen pirate ships, futuristic cities, mountains flowing with lava, icy landscapes, old forests, and much more. Over 100 levels. Crash Bandicoot 4 seems to have things nailed down in the level variety department, and it seems things will be no different in terms of quantity either. There will be over 100 levels in the game, which is quite a lot. Just to put things in perspective, that's more levels than there were in all of N.Sane Trilogy put together, which means there's going to be more than enough content to keep players very busy. In fact, there's going to be even more stuff beyond that to try out. Inverted mode. Crash Bandicoot 4 It's About Time also features a mode called Inverted Mode, which is a mirror mode of sorts. Developed by Beanox, the developers of Crash Team Racing Nitro-Fueled, the Inverted Mode, which is unlocked when you finish the game, all levels are completely transformed in various ways, from the aesthetics and art style completely changing to new objectives and mechanics being put in place. For instance, one level is transformed into black and white, and Crash and COCO bleed color into the surroundings every time they spin. Players then have to use the colored sections of the level to find the right path forward. Flashback levels. There will be even more optional content to dive into beyond the inverted mode. Crash Bandicoot 4 will also feature flashback levels, which will see CORTEX experimenting on Crash in his test chambers. These levels will see players going through these test chambers by solving puzzles and overcoming technical obstacles. Interestingly enough, completing flashback levels will also reveal bits and pieces of the series' lore and backstory to you, which could be interesting, but it could also be a complete disaster. But let's hope it's the former. Boss fights. Of course, Crash Bandicoot 4 It's About Time is going to be all about platforming. There will be some set-piece boss encounters as well. These will include fights against a mix of returning and new characters, with Injin having been confirmed as a boss that players will take on in the game. Developers Toys for Bob have also said that boss fights, which will often have multiple phases, will be more challenging than what fans of the original trilogy will remember. What this entails remains to be seen, but we're always down for well-designed, challenging boss encounters. Skins. Cosmetic customization might not be something everyone cares about, but a lot of people do, and if you're one of the latter, Crash Bandicoot 4 is promising to have you covered. There will be multiple different skins that each character will be able to equip in the game, and from what we've seen of them so far, their designs seem to be on point. No microtransactions. Of course, when a game has skins, that usually goes hand in hand with microtransactions. That apparently won't be the case in Crash Bandicoot 4, with the developers confirming that all skins in the game, other than the ones locked behind pre-orders, will be unlocked through the gameplay itself. It should be said, however, that Activision often releases games without microtransactions only to add them in following the release. Whether or not that happens here remains to be seen. Possible PC, next-gen, and Switch versions. When Crash Bandicoot 4 It's About Time launches on October 2nd, it will be available on PS4 and Xbox One. But will it be coming to other platforms as well? Well, the answer to that question remains unclear for now, but it seems likely nonetheless. Mention of a Switch version has been found in the code of the game's official website, while Activision have also said that they're evaluating more platforms for the game. Given the fact that N.Sane Trilogy and Spyro Reignited Trilogy both eventually came to Switch and PC, and the fact that CTR launched on the Switch day and date, it's entirely possible that It's About Time will make its way over to those as well. Additionally, given how close we are to next-gen console launches, it's hard to imagine that a major AAA release like Crash 4 won't be coming to the PS5 and Xbox Series X as well. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from Gaming Bolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.